Hey everybody, this is Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV. I'm with Hadi Hotait, Greg, Moray, and Niels, and we are in the Beqaa Valley, and we're heading to Baalbek city right now. And from there, we're going to be checking locations that got hit in the Beqaa Valley over the last 24 hours. Stay with us, we'll be there soon. We're giving the permission to go inside the Baalbek ruins, as you can see behind me. They haven't been open to the public since the beginning of the war. This here, right here, is the Temple of Bacchus. And we can go inside. It has an amazing acoustics. They would have a whole orchestra there during the Baalbek Music Festival that's been going on since the 1960s. And a lot of important people like Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, huge names that performed here. And when we go up there, I'm going to show you a few things to understand the story of that archaeologist yesterday, the Zionist archaeologist that crossed into southern Lebanon. Now you'll understand once we go upstairs.
Yeah. The richness of the carving is, immediately striking, and the state of preservation of some of it is just fantastic. And the colour of that stone as well, of the next temple along.
Some of the oldest columns that you'll find in the old world are still standing here.
These are large columns. Some of the oldest and some of the largest.
Yeah.
And when you compare it to other places like Ephesus and Salamis in Cyprus, which is Phoenician in origin, this is finer. The quality of it.
Yeah, it was the most important site even during the Roman Empire. There was nothing grander than this. Not in Rome, not in Athens. And the site is huge. The other temples, obviously a lot of them fell because there was a few earthquakes.
I'm just, appears to be an eagle holding this, and all the time we have this Israeli killer drone circling, and I don't think I'm being paranoid. I think it is actually circling us.
It's following us, and they hate media that is effective, that is counter to their narrative. This is a plaque from the German emperor who arrived here in the 1880s, and with a huge caravan. He came with the Ottoman emperor, and the German Empire at the time put in a huge donation to revamp the sites of Baalbek. So it says 1885. So this is just before, at the same time when the emperor was coming here, the German emperor, Theodor Herzl, who was trying to convince the Germans and the Ottomans to give him Palestine, he followed the emperor because the emperor kept on refusing to meet him in Europe. So he followed him on his trip from Istanbul to Baalbek to try to convince him to hand over Palestine or convince the Ottomans to do so. And in fact, like there's one photo of Herzl on his, tracking of the emperor, the German emperor, trying to, and he was not able to. The emperor refused the whole time, and that's when the Zionists decided to switch imperial
switch allegiance.
Exactly, to switch allegiance and find a different empire to sponsor their project. Yesterday, of course, it was a big story of an Israeli quote-unquote archaeologist who went in with the Zionist military invading South Lebanon. He was trying to get to the shrine of what was his name? Mar Sham'aun, who is basically Peter. Okay, so Saint Peter, he has a shrine in the south of Lebanon. He was trying to get there to prove somehow that there is some Jewish heritage there. But look on top of us what we have right here. These are the largest six-pointed stars in all the old world. Okay? And you will see in the site here a few of those. Two things to know. Number one is that before ISIS destroyed the Baal temple of Baal in Palmyra, the roof of the temple of Baal had all these symbols: the six-pointed star, the crescent, the cross, the swastika. All of those were symbols from the old Canaanite religion. Now the Zionists, in their depravity, they want to claim that this temple of Bacchus and the temple of Baal before him was actually the temple of Solomon. They want to claim that the old lost city of Solomon is Baalbek. All because of these six-pointed stars. Okay. Look, this is part of the roof that fell, and you can see it if you want close up.
Yeah.
But obviously there is Roman figures there. This is not the Temple of Solomon.
Of course, the key point to say is that this is all mad anyway. I mean, even if it was, so what? The 2,500 years ago, Switzerland was inhabited exclusively by Celtic tribes. You had the Latin culture, you had another culture around Zurich, and there's no doubt about that. There's massive archaeological evidence of it, and it's not in dispute. Switzerland's no longer inhabited by Celtic tribes. The Celtic tribes are now in Brittany and Scotland and Ireland and whatever. But you would have to be totally mad to say, well, 2,500 years ago we Celts lived in Switzerland, therefore Scotland is going to claim Switzerland. Even if you found irrefutable evidence that this was Jewish, it would give no right to the state of Israel to take it now. That whole idea is just so completely nuts. And I think what we have to say about, and I'm obviously, personally, I believe that no man is an island. I don't think people are born evil. I think circumstances, the way they're brought up, some people are more inclined to evil than other people, but I don't think evil arises spontaneously on this earth, and so I'm never happy when anyone dies, whoever they are. I'm with John Donne. No man is an island. Each man's death diminishes me. So I'm not happy the Israeli so-called archaeologist was killed yesterday. But when you look at what they're doing, it's utterly mad. The army and the Nazis did this, looking for traces of Aryan civilization.
Oh, yes.
The Israeli army invade a country and they bring with them, in full military uniform it should be said, the man was indistinguishable from a soldier and he was armed, they bring with them archaeologists to attempt to prove that thousands of years ago this was their land, in order to justify annexing it.
Oh, yes.
And how mad do you have to believe that that's, you know, okay, I've no doubt that at some stage there were Hebrews wandering around South Lebanon. Doesn't give them any right to it now. And just as the fact that Celts were in Switzerland doesn't give me any right to it now. You know, I can't turn up in Switzerland and say, my ancestor was here 2,000 years ago, give me your house.
Yeah.
And the fact that the world accepts that kind of utter nonsense, utter nonsense, is astonishing to me. I just, when you realise that the governments of the most powerful states in the world act on that philosophy and act with that belief, and are prepared to massacre women and children because of that belief, and don't care that 60,000 Palestinians or more have already been killed, don't care that 3,500 to 4,000 people in Lebanon have been killed, all because of this crazed belief in the right of a people to somewhere they happen to have used to live 3,000 years ago. It's totally nuts, and I can't believe it's happening.
You see, us here in the region, we don't accept these fabricated stories. And part of why the Americans in the West have been interested specifically in destroying archaeological sites in the region, including in Syria, as we saw happen in Palmyra, is because these sites prove our connection to this land. These sites prove that we are the ones that brought to humanity these ideas and the connectivity of us to the land. The other thing is that up until now, there hasn't been one archaeological record found in Palestine or in the region that is pre-Babylonian exile. Meaning it's now 200 years since Herzl and came here in the 1880s, almost 150 years, and they've been digging inside Palestine, the Brits, the French, even before the creation of the Zionist colony, and they haven't found one record of the mythical time of the story in Palestine prior to the return from quote-unquote exile in Babylon. So the other problem with all this idea is that one thing is to say, I am Celt, okay, I'm Scottish right now, Celt, my ancestors were in this location. It's another to say, I am Christian, Scot, therefore the apostles and Jesus are my ancestors and I have a right to Palestine. Their claim about Judaism, Jewishness is a religion, it's not a bloodline. And this is where the main problem lies, is they're trying to do, on the one hand, an idea of purity of blood, this pseudoscience of race that the Nazis believed in, which they have, even if they try, there's no way that they are pure-blooded from 4,000 years ago, more pure-blooded than the local indigenous that never left in terms of ancestry to the original peoples here. And the other, they want to claim religion as it's craziness, crazy talk. We're not going to accept it here in the region, and this is why they're trying to genocide and ethnic cleanse people, because 100 years and we haven't given up.
I agree with you, except that I'm quite sure if I research, I can find a pagan Celtic god who gave me Switzerland.
Oh, yes. Yes, look at that. You see now there's the Nazi
Yes, I was noticing it earlier, seeing the swastikas.
Right?
Yeah.
So these are all part of the Canaanite symbolism of religion prior to even monotheism.
It's interesting because it's like a cross between the Nazi swastika and the Greek key symbol. It's like a melding of the two.
Yes, it symbolizes eternity. See, like it's infinity going in and out, and it doesn't stop.
It's beautiful here, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just astonishing to think in such a lovely civilization, a lovely town like this, in such a lovely valley, which has deep traditions, which makes some of the best wine in the entire world, They are now bombing and killing civilians for reason of nothing other than religious hatred. I find it extremely difficult to come to terms with, and they're threatening to kill us.
Oh yes.
For reasons of nothing but hatred. And it's just extraordinary. And what life is like for the people here. Because yesterday 60 people were killed in this town. 60 people were killed in this town, every one of them civilians. You imagine you live here, you're like the 3 lovely young boys who were playing on their bicycles just outside the gate with us. What's life like for them, where, you know, people every day, tens of people are being killed, suddenly destroyed. And remember, for every one killed, there are normally a multiple of that of people seriously injured, perhaps maimed for life. And yet you have this terrorizing, deliberately loud, like again, we keep doing Nazi comparisons, but they are apt. It's like the Nazi Stuka dive bombers, which deliberately made a screaming noise to terrify the population as they bombed. This drone, it's taking lots of pictures. It is armed with missiles. It could kill people at any moment. But primarily what it's actually doing at the moment is making a lot of noise in order to terrify people. And this, you know, the indiscriminate bloodshed, the murder of civilians and the terrorizing, this is terrorism. Israel really is a terrorist state. And I've said that often as a sort of intellectual concept, but when you're here, you feel it. You feel Israel is a terrorist entity. And
that's why we ask anyone that is doing media work on Palestine, on Lebanon, to come to the ground here, to see for themselves. The reality is totally opposite to what the Western media is showing the audiences, and visits by individuals like you, Craig, make a huge difference because you bring the story from the ground, not from a Zoom video somewhere. Let's continue going around. Let's take a look at a few things, and then we will show you how the city has been targeted. And you know, this is a small village, town kind of, with a lot of parks and so on. People are very happy in this place, and now we will see how their life has been changed.
I mean, it's awe-inspiring now. Think how awe-inspiring it must have been 3,000 years ago.
Oh yeah, it was, you know, it still is one of the largest Roman archaeological sites in the world. The Roman Empire spent a huge amount of money on this location because they viewed it as, you know, not only has this agricultural area plus all the quarries for the stone, but it was the crossroads for the Silk Road would come from Damascus through here, up over the Qalamun Mountains down to Beirut and Tripoli.
I read and heard of Baal and the Canaanites, and I never thought I would actually be here seeing it.
This is all the Mount Lebanon range.
Yeah.
It's the Qalamun range, and at the end of, on that side will be the Golan Heights. You could tell from how big these columns were, how high this roof was. And I mean, the view is majestic. You have the whole valley, both mountain ranges on both sides of you.
Yeah.
You could understand why they thought this is a holy place.
You're talking of something on the scale of a modern cathedral, of a big modern cathedral. And, I mean, isn't that just wonderful? It's just amazing. It's breathtaking up here, and it really gives you an idea of the geography of the place. And also this amazing fertile, temperate valley here, which is a real jewel. And I suppose for millennia, empires have fought over it.
It has a ecosystem that's, a weather that's separate than the rest of Lebanon. In the summer is very hot, but in the winter it's very cold. And the snows and water spill comes off the mountains. It gets covered in snow here in winter. And by the time it goes up the Qalamon mountains towards Syria, all the precipitation has fallen here, and very little comes to the other side of the mountain. But the highway from Damascus to Beirut is just south of us here. Anyone that wants to cut the supply route to Beirut will have to occupy this area, and also to stop the supply route from Homs going through the Beqaa Valley to Beirut. So in 1980s, it was the biggest battle between the Syrian military and the Israeli military. Once the Israelis occupied Beirut, they were trying to capture the road to Damascus. And that's when the Syrian military invaded. And it was the largest tank battle in modern history since World War II. And it was also the largest Air Force battle. The Syrian military and Air Force managed to actually stop the invasion and defeat the Israelis, but the losses were huge. Syrian Air Force lost something like 70 somewhat aircraft. But that battle began the retreat of the Israelis. So a few weeks later, there was the attacks in Beirut on the American and French barracks, and then the retreat started. So without the Syrian military intervening at that moment, Lebanon would have been occupied and Damascus would have been basically besieged. From the border to Damascus is 20 minutes drive.
Yeah. So now, 40 years later, they're trying to occupy Lebanon again.
Yep.
And there's been, of course, should be like 20-year intervals. There's another attempt in 2006, and
yes.
And now they're at it again with what seems like purely. I mean, they're able to make very little headway on the ground. So it looks like they're going for the option of bombing Lebanon into submission with simple carpet bombing, basically. AI controlled over a period of time, gradually increasing, but with no object other than flattening the civilian population in order to make Lebanon surrender. That appears to be the basic context.
Yes. I mean, in 1982, it took them 8 days to reach from the south of Lebanon to Beirut. In 2006, they spent 33 days and they couldn't go further than 30 kilometers in the south in just one valley. Now they're not able to even capture 1 meter of the ground and hold it in the south of Lebanon. So there's no way they can reach the Beqaa Valley and cut the highway. This is very important. The other thing that we need to remember from the 1982 is the Syrian military entered and installed air defenses. And that protected Lebanon up until 2005, when most probably the Saudis and the Israelis assassinated Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri, who was refusing to cut relations with Syria and Iran, and caused the expulsion of the Syrian military and specifically the air defenses. And within 6 months, of the expulsion of the Syrian air defenses and forces from Lebanon, we had the 2006 war. And Lebanon was naked with no air protection.
We'll finish with the Craig.
Yeah, and if you have a genocidal country, a genocidal state that just wants to inflict terror and really doesn't care how many civilians it kills, and you have no air defences, you're really in trouble, because they can just kill tens and tens of thousands of people, and you can't stop them doing it from the air until someone takes out their air bases. But my great fear for Lebanon is a continued long-term, just as we've seen in Gaza, a year of destruction from the air, with the death of tens and tens of thousands of people. I mean, we all pray that the world, having had enough of Israel, will stop that from happening. But that's what they're trying to do. I think there's no doubt that is their intention.
It is, and they've lost the military battle on the ground, even in Gaza. And that's the only thing that they're resorting to, is punishing the population, terrorizing them, and massacring people. We have now the ICC arrest warrants. We'll see where that goes. In the meanwhile, we're going to go and investigate some of the sites that got hit in Baalbek, and hopefully whatever we record will be used in any court cases that will be trying the war criminals of the Zionist colony.
Yeah, this is about gathering evidence. Evidence to present to public opinion in the West and elsewhere in the world, and evidence that stacks up the case for genocide against Israel.
So this is called the Manshiyeh, which is the house of the Ottoman governor of Baalbek, built in the 1800s. You see how close they are to the actual ruins, and we were standing there beside the columns.
Yeah.
So some of the ruins there got pieces of these stones thrown at them, as you can see all the way there. And there is no strategic or military use for this. It is just a symbol of the history and the heritage of the region.
Nobody was living there. It was just
It's a museum that you could visit, right? And so they purposefully hid it to threaten people that they will be hitting the rest of the archaeological sites. And on top of that, we're right across from Palmyra Hotel.
Yeah.
Right? And this is a historical hotel, and it got damaged in this attack. And again, they wanted to remind the residents of Baalbek that they can destroy Baalbek just like they destroyed Palmyra. There was no reason to damage this except for that terrorization and threat.
It's horrible when you see it, and of course you realise the power of these missiles. And what, 5 vehicles destroyed, solid building taken down that had lasted 200 years. And they're doing the same to houses with children in. It's just awful. And as you say, no possible motive. It's a museum, for goodness sake. Why are you destroying a museum? It's barbarism of the worst kind. And I'm just astonished that the world, fails to acknowledge it. I'm just astonished. Well, the International Criminal Court has now acknowledged it, thank goodness. And the International Court of Justice is going to acknowledge it. But the leadership of Western countries turns a blind eye and refuses to accept this is happening.
And you could imagine you know, the reaction when the Notre Dame church caught fire. I mean, if any of those people really cared about archaeological sites and heritage, they would have been crying for the destruction of the Manshia here, or the damage that has been done to the archaeological sites here. This is right in the edge of Baalbek city, but what we have been told is that this building we're standing on the ruins of was the home of Ali Hijazi, the head of the Ba'ath party in Lebanon. Although his house was not the direct target, the target was across the street here, another home. The explosion took down his home, and there was 2 martyrs, the guards outside his house. He wasn't in the whole house, neither was his family, and 12 injured that were taken to the hospital. We don't know what's the latest update on them. But you can see clearly that they used huge bombs, because look at how deep it dug here.
You know what strikes me is that, you know, it's heartbreaking. You look among the 2 people died here, and you look among the wreckage, and plainly they're civilian homes. They're not missiles, they're not weapons factories. No matter how careful you look, and we've been looking, there's nothing in these buildings that isn't the normal detritus of a civilian house. They're children's-sized bookshelves down there, and I think that's a fridge.
No, this is actually a gas.
Gas
a
boiler.
Stove.
Yeah.
And this is the gas.
That's the gas stove. Yeah.
And you can see the coffee maker right there.
Yeah. These.
This is the sink.
Yeah, and we're in the kitchen basically.
Yeah.
You know, you just don't get this impression in the West that they always give the Israeli version saying Israel said it was a Hamas arms factory. Israel said it was a Hezbollah military base. You know, they always give the Israeli version. Then afterwards they may give the truth, as though the truth and the falsehood are alternatives, and you should just give, instead of telling the truth and getting out there. You know, why are the BBC not standing here? Why are Western journalists not here seeing that what the Israelis are doing is simply killing civilians in civilian homes? Because that is what's happening. And there are no 2 sides to this. This is a massacre of civilians and nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, the Western journalists like to talk about, you know, telling the truth and the fourth estate and all of that. And they wouldn't bring a rapist that's accused in front of a court of being, you know, raping somebody, and give them half of the time to complete with the truth coming out of the victims. But only when it comes to the Zionist state are the Zionists allowed to spew their hatred and their lies on air unchallenged.
The BBC actually led the story. On the 6 o'clock news, the BBC didn't which is the main news, the BBC didn't carry the arrest warrant against Netanyahu at all yesterday. And they actually led their later news, framing it as Israel condemns ICC warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu. That was the framing. It's astonishing.
I saw the Guardian headline also was...
Yeah.
They said, the first headline they wrote was, Netanyahu says it's anti-Semitic.
Yes, I recall.
And then they had to change it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, you know, if telling you this is Israel killing civilians is anti-Semitic, then, you know, the world is getting anti-Semitic.
Hey everybody, so we did our tour with Craig and Niels and Hadi of the Baalbek region. We were followed the whole time by a drone on top of us. It was a dangerous situation. Luckily, although the Zionists were worried where Craig is going, what he's going to see, what he's going to report, it seems like our lives are safe for now. We're heading to Beirut, back to Beirut. Thank you all. You can also visit Craig's website. He will have separate reports that you can see what he has done. Continue visiting his site and visit freepalestine.video to share the content and to donate. We need your help. Continue donating. Until we meet next time, I bid you all a free Palestine.